My name is Ron Guttardi. I'm with the Oral History Project of the Battleship New Jersey and Keene University. And we're here this morning on March 31st, 2011. And we have a guest today who's going to tell us about his experiences in the Navy in World War II. His name is George Covely, C-O-V-E-L-Y. And this recording and any transcripts, abstracts, or indexes made from it will be stored in the Oral History Department of the Battleship New Jersey and made available to researchers and historians. George, just for the record on the tape, can you tell us again what dates you served in the Navy?
Well, I went in February of 43, and I got out in February of 46, 3 years.
Okay, and your rating in the Navy was?
Radarman second class.
Radarman second class, okay. And you served on board the USS Sloat.
No. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Sloat, spelled S-L-O-A-T,
Yeah, that's
right?
Sloat, yeah.
Okay. And the dates of that service, please?
We got on the Sloat in 1943 in about the middle of August in Texas.
And is your end of service on the Sloat?
Had to be August.
2 years later?
Yeah, three years later, about in August the same time,
Okay.
of 46.
Okay. How did you get into the Navy, George?
Well, when they bombed Pearl Harbor, I wanted to go. I was only 17, and my mother wouldn't sign. But I said, if you don't sign, the Army will take me when I'm 18. So she signed for me, but they didn't take me till I was 18. Because it was in December she signed for me, but in January I was 18, January 6th.
And where did you do your basic training?
Bainbridge, Maryland, with all the mud is. It was a new base, and you went someplace, you marched in mud.
What time of year was that? That was in.
Well, that had to be in February of
February.
43.
Okay.
Was there 8 weeks.
And then right after basic training, did you get assigned to a ship?
No, we went to Norfolk, Virginia, and they took us out in the field, and they was going to give you what you wanted to be, and I wanted to be an aviation mech. So they had plumbers and carpenters and all that stuff, and the guys went to that, but I wouldn't go until I got to be aviation mech. So instead, they put me in the kitchen where I washed dishes, in the scullery they called it. And I was there for maybe 2 months, and they come around and said, anybody wants sea duty, sign up. I signed. And then I went to the other end of Norfolk and was there till we went to Texas to pick up the ship.
And when did you get your radar man training?
I didn't have no radar training.
Oh, you didn't?
No, that's the
got
funny part.
Okay, go ahead.
The radar men come aboard ship, there was 4 of them, and they were the only people that knew anything about the radar. Well, I bunked near one, and they needed another radar man, so he asked me if I wanted to be in the radar, and I said, yeah, why not? So they took me up the radar shack, and from that day on, I was in the radar.
That's an interesting story. Well, radar was still developing during World War
Yeah,
II.
yeah.
It advanced a lot.
Oh, I can imagine. I was shocked when a battleship could hit something 23 miles away.
And then how did your assignment to the USS Sloat come about then?
Well, you'd stay in 8-hour watches, and then you'd be off, just like if you went to work for 8 hours, you'd be home till you went to work the next day. But I was in a bad situation. I was in the C division, but they made me work in the deck force, because that's where I was at in the deck force, and when they took me up to the radar shack. So if I got off work, I had to go to work in the deck force. So the lieutenant in the deck force got to like me, and he told them if I didn't get a rate for third-class radarman, he'd give me a rate for boatswain mate and pull me out of the radar shack. And they were very fast, give me a rate.
Oh, that's good. Tell us about your duties as a radar man, if you would.
Well, our duties was simple because we took, the first 6 months, we took convoys over to the Mediterranean, and we just looked for submarines, but you wasn't going to see no submarines or anything because we had 5 destroyers, and no German sub is that smart to come near us. So we never saw anything. The only thing we saw when we got in the Mediterranean and there was a moonlight night, the Germans didn't bomb you. But as soon as the moon was dark, they would bomb you in the Mediterranean. But we didn't have to worry about that either because they only bombed the merchant ships. They left us alone.
Weren't you accompanying the merchant ships?
Yeah, there was 5 destroyers, maybe about 50 merchant ships.
Destroyers or destroyer escorts?
Destroyer escorts.
Okay.
Yeah, the destroyer escort is mostly after German subs. That's what they were made for.
Yeah, yeah. They did a lot of convoy duty. In
Well,
World
we
War
only
II.
was 6 months. Then the other year and a half, we were in the North Atlantic with a carrier and 5 destroyers.
Oh, you were in a task force then?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what the carrier was that you were with?
No, but our captain name was Garcia, Lieutenant Commander Garcia.
Captain of the Sloat?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I read something in the research I did about the Sloat engaged a German aircraft, Luftwaffe fighter during some of its.
No, we never saw a
Travels.
German aircraft,
No?
only in the Mediterranean where they shot down one and they said they damaged another one. So I don't know how they knew they damaged another one. But I did see the one go down.
So your task force did engage with
Yeah,
a German.
Yeah, that looked like,
Aircraft.
to me, I was young, looked like 4th of July because every third bullet is a tracer, just like a light, and you could
Mhm.
see.
So you never saw any submarines or any other.
No, at the end
enemy
of the
vessels?
war, we saw one sub. And what happened, we had 5 destroyers, and the sub come up, and what I didn't like, they didn't give him a chance to surrender. They just sunk him. And I thought they were stupid. They could give him a chance to surrender, they'd have a German sub, which I thought, but I wasn't in charge.
Yeah.
That's the only German sub we ever saw.
And that was towards the end of your service
Yeah.
on the Sloat? How about some of the ports that you called on? Do you remember some of them?
Well, Bizerti in Africa, we got there just after they pushed the Germans out of Africa, and the whole town was just shot up, and we weren't allowed off the ship because they said there were still dead soldiers in the fields. And then we went to Casablanca too.
Yeah, I saw that on the list of areas that the Sloat visited. I have some of them here. See if any of these ring a bell. Some of this might have been during Shakedown. New Orleans, Bermuda, Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, we went to Bermuda for shakedown, and why we stopped in Charleston, South Carolina, I don't know. But we did stop there for a few days.
Anything you remember about your
Yeah,
visits?
some nice girls.
Let's see. Then the Sloat went to New York, Norfolk, Virginia, North Africa, Casablanca, back to New York, Bizerti, which you mentioned, in Tunisia, Casco Bay, Maine. What'd you
Yeah.
do up there? Do you remember?
And I don't know why we stopped in Portland, Maine, but we did.
And also in Newfoundland, in Argentia, Newfoundland.
Well,
Yeah.
that might have been, we stopped there, it was in the North Atlantic, and our ship got coated with ice, and we got top heavy, and we had to pull into Canada so they could spray the ship, get the ice off. But I don't remember the name.
Okay, and then Caribbean. You were in the Caribbean for a while. Then the ship went to the West Coast. Were you still on board then?
No, I
You
got
got
off.
off
I got off
before.
about a month or two before they went to the West Coast.
Okay, and then it served in the Pacific.
Yes.
For the rest of its service during World War II. Tell us a little bit about what life was like on a destroyer escort. Would you please?
Well,
George?
life was really good because we had a great crew, and you'd stand your watches, and then we'd go play cards, or we lay out on the deck when it was in August, so we lay out on the deck at the sun. And we had all good officers but one was a really stink pot.
Okay, why was he a problem?
Well, he would come in a radar shack, and we're in the North Atlantic, and you're looking at the radar. You know you're not going to find no ships or subs, but we'd kid around and look away from it. He just had to let you know that he was in charge, and he'd say, "Stop, you look at the radar, don't go telling jokes. And everything he could do, he would just, he was the big shot. But then one day I was standing watch on the 12 to 8, and you're not allowed to refuse his coffee. So I called up they were on the flying bridge. I called up to him and I said, I'd like to go down and get a cup of coffee. And he said, permission not granted. So I said, I'll send somebody else down. He said, permission not granted. I said, well, then I'll fall asleep. And I knew that rat would come down in about 10 minutes. So I had a guy looking out the door. When he saw his steps, I just put my head against the radar and made believe I was asleep. So he come down, he made a mistake, he touched me. So I looked him right in the eye and I said, that's two mistakes. One, you cannot refuse us coffee, and two, you just touch me. And if you ever bother us radarmen again, I'll tell the captain what you just did. And he was great at that.
How about sleeping on board a destroyer?
Well, I was in the
Escort?
middle bunk against the bulkhead in the North Atlantic. That bulkhead was cold. And I slept aft. You go down the ladder, you turn to your left, there was 3 bunks, and you go over the second 3 bunks, and I slept in the middle.
How was sleeping in heavy seas?
Bad.
And what did you do to stay in your bunk?
Well, they had the chains coming down, and you just grab both hands, one on just like this on the chains, and hang on. We did hit waves up to 50 foot high.
50 foot, that's pretty
Yeah,
high.
because the gun shield on the 3-inch 50 in the bow, then waves just flattened it. I don't know if it was 50 feet, that's what I was told, but they were big.
Yeah, I've heard some stories about destroyer escorts that in heavy seas, the forward gun mount is just about useless because the waves are crashing over it all the time.
Yeah, well, they flattened ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just almost like going downhill, and then the whole ship would just quiver as it started back up.
Did you ever get seasick?
No, for about the first week I didn't feel good, but I didn't get seasick. And we had one boy, he was 178 pounds, and when we come back he was 125. And they put him off the ship, and they said no more sea duty for him.
And it was seasickness that was
Yeah.
his problem?
And then even like on Saturdays at the afternoon, we go out and we have a boxing lesson at the rear, and they just match you up. And there's one big guy, he's a good friend of mine, and he used to be, he chopped wood in, I think it was Wisconsin or somewhere, logger, and his muscles were, oh God, they were like this. So I said I'd fight him. So I guess he didn't try to hit me, but I must have hit him too much, and he got mad, and he hit me right in the face, and I went right to my knees, and they said, that's it, stop the fight.
And that was the end of your boxing career?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you form any lasting friendships?
Yeah, I got a friend in Hannah in Florida, and I looked him up maybe a couple of years ago. And I went to where he lived during the war, and I traced him all the way to Florida. And after 60-some years, I called him on the phone, and I said, Hannah? And he said, yeah. I said, this is George Covely. And he knew me right away. And we went to visit him. He only had one leg, but we had a good time talking over old times. And the good part, he worked in a laundry. So if they had a shirt that didn't have your name on it, I got it or he got it.
Did he lose his leg in the war?
No, I don't know. He lost it after war. The doctor made a mistake. I don't know exactly what he did, but if he did what he was supposed to do, he wouldn't have lost his leg.
Were there any casualties aboard your ship?
No.
None at all?
No. The only casualty we saw was that the stupid captain of the carrier sent up the planes on a foggy day. And then the fog come in and the planes couldn't get back. So all the destroyers spread out and the 5 planes landed alongside. Now the pilot got out, but his radio man didn't. You could see him trying to open the hatch. It was awful. And he went down with the plane.
So they lost a whole squadron of
They lost
planes?
5 ships.
Five
planes?
planes?
5 planes, yeah.
Wow. How was the food aboard a
Food wasn't
destroyer?
bad. The captain, we were the captain pets, though, because one day after I ate, I went up, I was eating a jelly and bread sandwich, and he said, is that what you have for dinner? I said, no, I just love it. And he also thought I was a farmer. because one of the kids went to my town, and they said, it was a small town, he lived in a big city, and he called, he said lived in farm, so everybody knew I was a farmer. So the captain, one day, I was talking to him, he talked to us a lot, and he said, where would you sleep tonight if you could be home? I told him I'd sleep with the pigs.
Where were you raised? What town?
Mountie from Gloucester and Belmar.
Okay. South Jersey.
Yeah.
Any other experiences that you remember on board the Sloat?
No, just the main thing was the big waves and the ice. And then you didn't have to worry about, you had no worry about getting sunk. So, I mean, you just go play cards and wouldn't worry, if you was off duty, you wouldn't worry about anything.
How about big storms? Did you run into any big
Well,
storms,
the big
hurricanes?
storm was that we ran into a hurricane that wrecked Atlantic City. I forget what year that was, 44, 45.
Yeah, it was about that. I was
Yeah,
living in Atlantic City at the
yeah,
time.
well, we
I
were
remember
down
the
there.
whole boardwalk was gone.
We were in Norfolk, and they made us go out. They didn't want us in the dock to the pier when the storm was coming, so we had to go out and ride the storm. That's why we was in it.
And
But otherwise, it's just the two storms and the icing of the ship is our biggest problem we had.
Yeah, there was a famous typhoon in the Pacific
Yeah, they sunk
Ocean.
3 DEs, I think.
Yep. Well, destroyers, not
Destroyer.
DEs. They-
Oh, destroyers. Oh, I thought that was,
900 guys were dumped into the ocean.
Yeah.
And a destroyer escort by the name of USS Tabor rescued 55 guys from that.
oh, yeah.
There's a DE up in Albany, New York.
We're going.
Are you?
Yeah.
It's called
As soon
the
as it gets
Slater.
warm. Yeah, yeah. I have it on my computer. I read all about it. I
Yeah.
wish I remember the names of the ships I was with, but I don't. I think the Savage was one, but I'm not sure.
Other in your squadron.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I'm going up to see the Slater myself
Uh-huh.
sometime this spring, probably. Any other stories? How about some sea stories? Any memorable people? How about your chief? Was he
Well,
a character?
Well, we didn't have no. We had a chief, but he wasn't a radar man.
Oh.
Because we just had the first class. I was second class, and then we just stood our watches. The only thing did happen. I was on a watch with the kid that taught me everything. But the thing, I was a big mouth. When the captain stood over me, I would talk loud to him as he talked loud to me. But this kid talked very slow. So the captain went down and told the chief to put me in charge of the radar over him. And when he did that, I said, this kid taught me everything. I don't want to be over him. If I'm going to be in charge of the radar, then I don't want him on my shift. And they took him out.
They put him on a different ship?
Yeah, because we went in, well, I'll tell you one. We went in the Mediterranean, and when you go in the Mediterranean, all the convoy ships go in a big ball. Whoop. And the captain is right here. And as soon as he seen a little pip coming out, he'd want to know what ship it was. I had no idea. But you don't lie to the captain. I told him what ship it was. I named the ship. So after we got out further, the other ships come out, then I knew who they were. Then I just changed them around. But he never knew that. So he said, Covely is the only guy that come on the radar, knows what the hell's going on. From now on, he'll be on the radar when we go in the Mediterranean. And all the other guys knew I was lying.
So they expected you to be able to identify the ship from the blip on the radar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, we were in position, say, off of two ships, say the Savage and the New York or something, but our position was in front of them.
Right.
And that's where he wanted to know. But as soon as they got out, I could see where they were. And we were in front of him, I just switched the names,
Okay.
which he didn't realize. But, yeah, I liked the captain. He was a good skipper. And then I'll tell you, when we was coming into Norfolk, and we was leading the destroyer behind us, and he said, Covely, I'm lost. Find me a buoy. So I said, okay. And he's standing right there. And all of a sudden I said, there's a buoy off the port bow, and I gave him how far and everything. And as we got closer, we changed course to go to this buoy. As we got closer, the lookouts could not see the buoy. So he said, Covely, you just got me lost. And right after that, the guy hollered down buoy off the port bow. If he didn't say one word to me, he just walked out. That's
And-
about it. I didn't, that was one of, I liked that.
Any other stories you can tell us about your experiences on the Sloat?
Well, like that rowdy officer, we got so, he was in the North Atlantic and it's cold up there and he used to come down to Radar Shack and we was laughing and talking, he'd come in, we'd just be quiet. We wouldn't say one word. And then he'd ask us questions, we'd only answer him, but we wouldn't talk to him. So one day we're on true bearing and it went out and I had to change everything on the plotting board to rela bearing. And he stood right next to me and everything I marked down, he asked me questions so I'd have to talk. And after that, he was nice. That's about it, I guess.
Is there any difference in navigating in radar work from the Atlantic versus the Mediterranean? Because the Mediterranean is a relatively closed body of water. Is there any difference in using radar?
No, well, the radar in the Mediterranean was not wide, and you could pick up the whole land, see. And one day we was in the Mediterranean, and the lieutenant up in the flying bridge says, "What land's over there?" I said, "There's no land over there." And he said, "There is. I'm looking at it." So I went up and I seen it, and I went from 25 miles to 50 miles, and it was a mountain in Spain, 48 miles away. We saw the top of it. I couldn't believe that.
From the ship. It must have
Yeah.
been a really clear day.
Yeah, we were heading out.
Visibility
Mhm.
was really good.
Oh, and I did, well, I didn't exactly save a pilot, but I just got the information to the carrier faster than the other destroyers. The carrier's radar went out and they had a pilot out there about 50 miles. Well, our radar can't pick up a plane 50 miles, but what we have is IFF. So I turned the IFF on. Where the pips go up, when you see a plane, the IFF, the pip goes down. So as soon as I seen the pip go down, I got the range and bearing and we gave it to the carrier.
So you probably saved that guy.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't the other radarman for the other ship, but I was just first.
Okay. How did your experiences in the Navy change your life, George?
I don't think it changed at all. I was just a happy-go-lucky guy. I got out of the Navy and I was so happy. And I was really a little wild and I met my wife and 2.5 months later we got married. Now we're married 65 years.
Wow, pretty good. She tamed you, did she?
What's that?
She
No.
tamed you?
Asked him.
You're not wild. Are you still happy though? That's the question.
No, I'm not wild either. I'm happy, yeah. It's one thing that we just liked everything together. We went camping together. We liked that. Everything I did, she liked. Everything she did, I liked. We used to love to dance. Now my chest is bad. I can't dance no more.
What'd you do after the war?
After the war, I was a milkman, yeah. I had to think for 8 years. I served milk in Albion and Pine Hill, South Jersey.
Delivered milk?
Yeah,
To homes?
at your door, yeah.
Kids
And,
today don't believe we used to
No.
get milk delivered at home.
Yeah, that was a good. And the people in Pine Hill and Albion, they didn't have a lot of money, you know. And this one farm lady, she used to let her bill go like $17, $20, you know, and pay me a little bit. But then when the farm comes, guy would rent her field, she'd pay me off. But our director up there kept telling me that I'm letting her, you know, credit go too much. I said, if she don't pay it, I have to pay it, so stop bothering me. And he did. So, but I like the milk, the people, they'd invite you in for coffee, and then Christmas Eve, we had to work. And if they saw you, they wanted to invite you in for a drink. And I said, no, I want to get home to my kids. But that was a good job. Then I went to work in the machine shop
What company?
at Langston. I worked for RCA for a while, then I went to Boeing, and from Boeing, I went to Langston. Boeing was a good company to work for, but if I had to stay, I'd have to go to Philly, or, you know, outside of Philly. I didn't like the traffic every day, so I went to Langston in Camden, and I retired from them after 12 years. And I've been retired now 23, I think. I forget, 23, 22, I can't remember.
How old are you, George?
86.
You're
And I
pretty
think I'm in good
spry.
shape.
You're in good shape for 86.
Aboard the ship during World War II, what was the morale like, George, on your destroyer Escort?
Oh, the morale was great. All the guys were great. I never seen a fight or an argument the whole time I was there. You had your own buddies, they had their own buddies, and that's who you hung with, you know. You talk to other people, but not like you would to your own buddies. You usually hung with the people that slept in your group.
And were you at sea for long periods of time, or did you go back to England or Spain or wherever?
No, when we first started with the convoys, it would be 3 months, a month and a half over, a month and a half back. And that was almost by the day. The second convoy, we went in, I told my mom and dad when we'd be back. Then we went the North Atlantic. The carrier would have to give you could be out 6 months at a time. The carrier would feed you food, and when the carrier run out of food, then we'd have to come back. It was all according if they could give us enough food to make us stay out there, plus fuel. And one day we was getting fuel, and I was out there on the deck, and the carrier was so close, if I leaned over, I could have touched it. And boy, the
That must
captain
have
was
scared
yelling at
somebody.
the helmsman to get us out of there, and we moved away.
What's it like, if you're in a DE, and how long was that ship?
How long?
How long?
I'd say 300 to 310.
What's that like in a storm? I know Ron asked that question before, but what's it like
I
when
thought
you hit
it-
a storm in Atlantic in a DE?
And we did good in the storm. Them 50-foot waves, we went up, and when we went downhill, it would quiver as it went back up, and the screws were hanging out the back.
They came out of the water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I heard an
And the only it did was just the ice. That was the only two. We had little storms, but it never
Were you
bothered
ever
us.
nervous in any of those large storms? The thing
No.
flipping over, because
No.
the radar up on top? And that
Yeah,
was
with the
problem one,
radar.
too, the
You ever
radar.
see a destroyer where the portholes are up top? That's the wheelhouse. We were right behind the wheelhouse.
I heard an expression about serving on a destroyer escort, and that was the guys, the crew felt they should have got sub pay and flight pay because half the time they were under the water and half the time they were in the air during storms and heavy
Yeah.
seas.
Yeah, it's funny. No, I just trusted the ship. I never worried about it sinking.
How about, I've heard that it's pretty much wet all the time on board a destroyer escort.
Yeah,
Is
you
that-
can, well, I'll tell you, a thing, there's like a railing around where you can see out where they steer the ship. And one
The
day
open
was,
bridge or?
yeah, up the flying bridge, yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a railing out there, and me and the kids out there see who could stay the driest. As the ship hit the water, we'd duck behind the railing. And the captain looked out and saw us, and he called us in. He said, "I'm trying to fight a war, and I got two dummies out there. Soon as going to stay dry." That was one funny thing.
Was the captain, by the way, a younger man? Was he a lieutenant?
Lieutenant commander.
Lieutenant commander, so he's a little bit older.
I'd say he's in his 40s. I guess I'm not sure.
And how old, you were 18, 18? at this
18,
point?
yeah, 18, 19, and 20.
So it's like a bunch of young guys having a good
Oh
time
yeah,
at sea.
yeah, right. We was all great. They wanted to be on the ship, and so we never had no problem with that. But the captain he loved his radarman. And one day I was on the ship. I don't know, did I tell you about? He asked me where I'd like to be, if I could be home that night. And I said, yeah, I'd sleep with the pigs, and he thought that was great.
Anything else you can remember about your experiences in World War II, George?
No, I don't think so.
What do you think about today's Navy?
They're too modern for me. I can't even tell. I wouldn't know how to even look at a radar they got today. I can't wait to see ours on was it the Sloan or
Slater.
Slater? Yeah,
The
I
one
can't
up in
wait. I
Albany.
can't wait to go board it.
Yeah. Did you go in when you were on the tour? Did you went in the Combat Information Center, Combat Engagement Center on the battleship?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
but that was all new to me too. Well, I'll tell you one thing: the radar men on the battleship didn't know what we knew on the destroyer. Because when I went on this new ship, they was in like you went in a combat room. You had to take range bearings and give all this stuff. Well, this second class was over me, so he's in charge. But he didn't know how to do all the stuff I knew, so I did it. That's when the officer said he'd put me in charge, but he couldn't because the boy had more time than I did. I thought I didn't want to be in charge. And then he offered me first class if I'd stay and go aboard ship. I said, no, I want to go home. That was about it.
Can I jump in? Another question, might have covered this already. What was the food like? Because you said you resupplied from carriers. You probably had a tiny little galley area.
The food wasn't bad. The only thing we hated was the eggs.
Powdered eggs?
Yes. Soon as our eggs run out, it was the first thing the whole crew couldn't, and milk. They couldn't wait when we docked. They wanted milk and their eggs. That was the first thing we looked forward to.
Because you probably had powdered milk and powdered eggs
Yeah.
when you ran out.
Yeah, that was awful. Oh, yeah, I'll tell you another funny one. One day, we run out of water, so we weren't allowed to get a bath. So we run into a thunderstorm, and you saw maybe 50 naked guys out there trying to get washed in the storm.
Scrubbing down with soap?
Yeah, right.
Right, in the rain.
Yeah,
That's an interesting
that was
image.
funny, yeah. I did remember that. I don't think I remember anything else, but it's going back a lot of years for me to remember, but I did. That was funny, yeah. I was one of them.
What was your greatest fear on? Did anything scare you on this ship?
No.
Nothing. You're too
Nothing.
young maybe at that point. in your
No.
life.
Well, we was after the subs, so they didn't scare us because the subs would go the other way. So, I mean, the storm maybe, you're a little frightened, but you weren't what you call scared. You wasn't afraid you was going to sink.
Did you ever, I'm sorry, to jump in.
Go
I
ahead.
Go
just
ahead.
love these interviews. Did you ever talk to any guys who were on destroyers in the Pacific and like compare stories? The
No,
Pacific
I
to the
never,
Atlantic
no, I
and-
never met a guy
Never.
from the Pacific, but I'll tell you, I did met this lieutenant I didn't like. I met him in Philadelphia, and he took me out to lunch, and then he made a mistake. He said, I'm on a new destroyer. You want to come over and see it? And I said, yeah, I'll go. So he took me up, he introduced me to the Radarman, and then he had to leave the shack. And they said, how is he? I said, he's a stinking rat. So watch him. So he made a mistake taking me there.
What made this officer so bad to the?
Well, I mean, he'd come in the radar room, and if you were maybe joking around, you turn your head off the radar. You can't do that, look at the radar. Well, he picked any little detail. Any other officer would look over. He would tell you that don't do that. But one day, I met him walking up the deck. I saluted him, I looked him right in the eye, and I said, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not saluting you, but I'm saluting them bars on your shoulder. Yeah, I didn't take no stuff off him. Because once he touched me, that was a mistake.
George, do you remember anything about your ports of call in the Mediterranean, like Casablanca? Did you
No,
spend
all
any
I remember
time
there
on-
is we went ashore, but they said, don't go any blocks off the main thing or you won't come back. And they said that they liked stuff, so I stuffed a sheet up my coat, and then the Marines checked me and took it out. So I was trying to make some money. But no, that Casa and Bizerti, we wasn't allowed off the ship.
Any
And
other?
then, oh yeah, and then we got maybe Nova Scotia somewhere as we pulled in to get food and stuff. They'd give us a beer party. They'd take us out in the woods and they'd throw all the beer in the stream. Well, I couldn't drink. 2 beers, I'd be drunk. So when they took me back to ship, they carried me aboard. So everybody always knew how drunk I got. And then there was a party, was in South Carolina, was going to this USO. The lady had in a big house, she had a dance floor upstairs, and they bought me a pint of whiskey. Well, in 2 blocks, I drank the pint of whiskey. Of course, I drank it like soda. So when I got to that house, I was drunk, and they just set me in a chair, and all I did all night was just sit there and laugh at everybody. But when I went back the next night, everybody knew me. I danced with a lot of girls, too, because they wanted to talk to me. That was fun.
Any other questions?
So your convoy, each way was 6 weeks of travel?
Yeah, it was 3 months, a month and a half over, yeah.
And so there, how fast was the convoy traveling? 6 knots, 8 knots?
I don't think no more than 8 or 10
8 or
knots,
10
yeah,
knots.
they didn't go as fast.
And how many ships were in a typical
I'd say
convoy?
about 50 ships in the
50
convoy.
ships?
Yeah,
And you would be on the periphery of the convoy?
yeah, right out in
then?
front, right all the way across the front of the, would be every so many, so far that,
How many
we'd be-
warships in the
yeah,
convoy?
we could-
How many warships? In
5.
The 5?
yeah.
And did any of the ships ever get attacked, any of the convoy
No,
ships?
only on the Germans when they bombed us at night when there was no moon. That
Oh,
was
they
the
would come in when there's no...
No moon, yeah.
Why would they do that?
because if they come in with the moon, you could see them.
I see.
And if you could see them, they'd be shot down.
So Well, at this point, your ship had radar, but did you have radar-controlled guns on it?
No,
At this point,
no,
or that would come later
no.
on some other ships, probably?
No, the radar was just radar, that was it, period, nothing
Did
else.
you have a battle station other than your radar station?
No, just the radar room.
Okay. Did you have any other stations, like for man overboard or abandoned ship?
No,
You
no, I
stayed.
never had
you
nothing. The deck force took all care of that.
So you didn't fire any guns then?
No,
Now, radar duty, to me, would seem like that was a good job to have on a ship.
yeah, well, that's
Because
good.
the captain loves you, they're not gonna have you do dirty work, hurt your hands or anything like that, or harass you, and you have to be wide awake all the time.
Yeah,
So when you're off duty, they didn't bother you for swabbing a deck.
no,
Was that,
no.
am I
They did
correct?
that in the beginning when I was in both divisions, but then they got me out of that. But once I got rated, no, I didn't go back to the
You
deck
didn't go back.
force.
So radar is considered a plum job on a ship?
Yes, very plumb. You were the captain's pet.
Who else?
Especially on a small ship like that, where the captain knew the handful of radar men.
Oh, yeah, he'd be in a radar shack every day, you know, and we'd talk about different things. I don't remember what we talked about.
How many in the crew? Do you remember roughly?
I think it was 300.
300?
I'll tell you another good thing I did. You know this rowdy officer? One day I went in the helm, I went in the helm where they have the helm. I asked permission to get on the helm, and he said, permission granted. So I was steering the ship for about 15 minutes, and then I said, permission to get off the helm. And he said, permission not granted. So I waited a while, and then I went. And the ship started to go like, the hour down, get Covely off the helm. So that was funny too.
What is it like steering the destroyer?
Well, it was easy. I mean, you held it pretty good. There was no rough day, so it went pretty straight as far as I was concerned. But it turned pretty fast when I went this way and that way.
It had a pretty small turning circle, a
Yeah.
destroyer escort.
Yeah, they can turn pretty fast.
Now, we've interviewed here in the battleship, there were 2 destroyer escorts with all black crews operating in the Atlantic Ocean. The USS Mason is one of those, because the Navy was segregated.
Well, we had black crews, but they only took care of the officers.
So they would be the stewards and so on like that?
Yeah, that's all. They weren't with us. They slept in their own compartments up forward.
So you had black African Americans on your ship then?
Yeah, we had
And how
black.
many would be on the ship?
No, there wasn't many, maybe 6. There wasn't many black
And did
guys.
they have much contact between the white and black crew, or did they stay to themselves? Or?
No, they were in the compartment all by themselves. They slept right in the mess hall. Because we stole some food one time. We never got, we knew the officers were getting pears and stuff in cans. So we went by this black guy's bunk, and his keys was hanging there. And we took them off. We went up forward, we unlocked the locks, and then took his key back. Then we got all what we wanted, and they was having church sessions down on the stern. We were up in the 20 millimeters eating their fruit.
He was bad.
Good thing
Oh, they did, one day, this kid never took a bath, and they did scrub him down.
one of the crew never.
Yeah, yeah.
On deck, what'd they do?
Huh?
What'd they do, up on deck?
Yeah, they just took him out on deck and scrubbed him down with scrub brushes. So after that, he did take a bath.
Talk to us a little bit about the bathroom on these destroyers. Destroyer escorts, very small, tight showers. Did you have the Navy showers? Or
Yeah, they were small, and where you, when you had to go to, you had to poop or something, it was just a tray of water, just ran down, and you sit down, it would float down. Then you had to watch, I always got in the first one, because the fourth one, sometimes they'd light paper and send it down.
I've heard that on the battleship, World War II, they had just a big trough.
Yeah.
So they would take some lighter fluid, drop it in, throw it, and the third guy down and throw it in his butt. And that was some of the jokes they had.
Yeah, that was funny.
When you're 18, you shoot.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Well, you never went, you had a poop, you waited till you got the first one. I did anyhow.
And for any of the men who had any, let's say, a social disease, did they have special toilets? For the reason on the battleship, during World War II, if you did.
I don't think we had any guys that, because
you
you
would
would,
sit at a special section, so it would be transmitted, so they
Yeah.
thought at the time.
as soon as you left port, 3 days later, you go down inspection. You have to take it out, and they inspect everybody's. And we never, as far as I know, nobody ever had any disease.
Because I know there's a lot of that in the Pacific theater during World War II, coming out of the Philippines
Yeah.
after that. So.
Well, we never landed where we could even get a girl really that much, you know. Because even like in South Carolina, you just met her, and the next day you were gone, or the next 2 days. So you never got. And in them days, girls didn't give you any sex. You had to wait and marry them, like I did my wife.
Got it delayed. Sure, that's very different, very different.
I'm getting a signal here. I think it might be a battery running out there. Is that going to be recorded, that
It will
noise
be
that I
picked
hear?
up. You can stop for a second, hit the stop switch, and then
Okay. Where were we? We were talking about heads?
head, bathroom,
I'm still getting that,
let me listen, see what you think. It is still on record, let me shut this down, just. Okay, let me just sit real quick beside, see what, figure out what's going on. I don't know why we're picking. Love electronics.
sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay, it's working now. Yeah, what's happening is.
Pulled into New York, into the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And then, like I said, we couldn't wait for the ship to dock to get our milk and eggs.
Really?
That was the main thing. And then we'd stay usually 10 days, and then half the crew go for leave for 5, then we go leave for 5.
And then how long did they keep the ship on active duty? Was it quickly mothballed? Do you know what happened to
No,
it?
the ship was, they gave it some Navy, and it was with the Navy for like 20 years.
Okay.
And then they sold it to some place in near Norfolk, and they scrapped it for metal. So I won't be seeing my ship again.
Do they ever have any reunions? Is there any group?
No,
that
I
gets
looked
together?
and I wish they would, but they never did. I get the VFW every month, and I always looked, and I never saw any. Worst part, I wish I could remember their names. I'd look them up like I did Hannah, and I found him. I have a
Did
good
you- did you
friend,
do any search?
Taylor, in South Carolina, my sister wrote to, but I forgot his first name because I always called him Taylor, and so I can't find him.
Did you search on the internet?
Yeah, that's where I found it.
Okay.
Yeah, I traced Hannah from Indiana. I forget the city he lived in, right down to Florida.
There are some websites where they collect the names of crews of certain ships where you can go there and look for.
Well, I'd like to see that. I tried to find it, I couldn't. There is a website that got my ship. We'd have the names.
Well, I don't know specifically about your ship, but there's a lot of them for
Oh, okay.
different ships. Where you
Yeah, I
can
had
go.
on different things trying to get names of my friends, and I'd look a lot of them up. Because one kid was from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I never forgot the name of his town.
Wow.
Anything else?
Anything else that you can remember?
That's about it. I didn't do too bad, I guess.
No, you did great. The interesting thing is you got out and you were a radar man trained. Was there much of a demand for people, say, working for airlines, which were just starting up at the time in serious
No,
ways?
I don't think. I never looked into that.
after
And I think if you did, you'd have to go down near the ocean, and the Coast Guard took care of all that.
Oh,
See?
that's
So
right.
it'd be. I don't think I got a job at that.
So you were the only unschooled radar man on the ship then,
Yeah,
but you sound like you're about the best.
I was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to be very good because I used to practice the when you give a range of bearing another. I'd have your course and speed up. I could tell you how fast we'd meet you. Yeah, I was very good at that.
How did you, were you just, do you have to have mathematical skills, geometry skills?
No.
Or just,
No, just the skills that the simple math. You wouldn't have to have no real
and
math.
something I've often wondered about is when you're sitting at that radar set hour after hour, don't you get tired of just looking at a screen and, I mean, the sense
Yeah,
of
you
focusing
do.
like
So
this?
you look away for a little bit and then come back.
I see. Yeah.
Did you
But-
have trouble staying awake sometimes on a shift?
Just when we was on, when I asked the officer for the coffee that time, I was really sleepy. But most of the time, no, we stayed awake pretty good.
How long were your watches? 4 hours?
8 hours.
8 hours?
8
Yeah,
hours?
one time we were 4 on and 4 off. I think it was in Mediterranean, I guess, I forget where it was at. And we weren't to be bothered. We got in, we went to eat, we got right down first in line. We could sleep in our bunks where other guys couldn't. And that lasted, I don't know, a week or so, and then they took us off.
But
Because
most
they
of
gave
the-
me 2 guys that didn't know nothing about radar. And I'd tell them what to watch for, and if they saw anything, call me. And I got along with them great. They were nice.
So then later you were on 8 hour watches?
Yeah.
8 on, 8 off? Is
Yeah.
that
Well, you're 8 on, 16 off.
16 off?